All right, we're here to revise what we have learned about factors, and later we'll talk a little about greatest common factor and then how to simplify fractions. Norman's here to help us out for a little bit. She misses you guys a lot. All right, when we spoke about factors, we spoke about numbers that fit perfectly into other numbers. In other words, if I took a number and divided it, I would get a whole number. Let's start off simply with the number 8. Factors of 8 would be numbers that when they divide into 8, we get a whole number out. For example, 1 fits perfectly into 8. So does 2, so does 4, and so does 8. Let's have a little bit of a look at what that means. When I do 8 divided by 1, the number I get out is 8. Similarly, if I do 8 divided by 2, I get out 4. This is because each of these numbers are factors of 8, and often factors come in pairs. 1 and 8 are paired together while 2 and 4 are paired together. Because if 2 is a factor of 8, then the output, which is 4, must be a factor of 8 too. So let's try another one together. Let's try 12. So here we will write all the factors of 12 and we'll start off simply. Is 1 a factor of 12? Yeah, sure is. What about 2? 2 is also a factor of 12. 3 is also a factor of 12. Now let's talk a little bit about what is paired with 3. 3 multiplied by what is going to give me 12? And most of us know that is going to be 3 multiplied by 4. This means that 4 too must be a factor of 12. Because if I said 4 multiplied by what gives me 12, well, I get 3. And that is why they're called a pair. Let's talk about 2 for a moment. What would the pair of 2 be? I'll rephrase that. 2 multiplied by what must give me 12? Well, 6. And then 1. 1 multiplied by what must give me 12? 12. Using the pairing method will make sure that you are not missing any of the possible factors, as when you get to larger numbers, it becomes easier to forget and to miss certain factors. Let's try a more difficult number to end off with, and then we'll talk a little bit about the greatest common factor. Let's do 48. Now this is a tricky one because 48 does have a lot of factors. So we'll start up by counting from 1 to 10, and then after that it'll be easiest for us to pair them off. 1 is always a factor. 1 is paired with what? Well, 48. Is 2 a factor of 48? In other words, when I divide 48 by 2, do I get a perfectly whole number? And in fact, we do. 2's partner, or pair, will be what? Well, let's think about that. 2 multiplied by its pair must give me 48. What number, when multiplied by 2, will give me 48? And that's 24. What about 3? 3 is a little bit of a tricky one to figure out. We can try by breaking 48 up into numbers that we already know, that we can do without 3 times tables. Well, 3 goes perfectly into 30, and 3 goes perfectly into 18. So therefore, 3 must go perfectly into 48. Because when 30 and 18 come together, they form 48. So by using our math mental skills, we're able to recognize that 3 does in fact go perfectly into 48 and is therefore a factor. Let's think about 4. Knowing our multiplication charts, 4 in fact does go. What about 5? This doesn't end in a 0 or a 5, so it cannot be a factor. What about 6? Now once again, we have to look into our rusty minds and figure out whether or not 6 does in fact go into 48. And it does. What about 7? Well, we know that 7 times 7 is 49, so then 7 cannot possibly go into 48, so it's not a factor. What about 8? Now 8's an interesting one because 6 times what is going to give me 48? 8. So I found my pair for 6. Now we can go back and find a pair for 4 and 3, because once we have a pair this way, there's no point in going any further down. 4 times what is going to give me 48? Using multiplication charts, we know it must be 12. What about 3? Like we said before, 3 is a little bit of a tricky one, and for that reason it will be difficult to find the pairing factor. But just how we broke it down over here, we can figure it out. 3 goes into 30 how many times? 10 times. And how many times does it go into 18? 6 times. So, in order for 3 to fit perfectly into 48, it must go in 16 times. Because when you break it down, you're allowed to do that in math, and that's the fun thing about it. So, 3's pair is 16, and you can try it out. Once you've figured it out, you can go, okay, 3 times 10 gives me 30, and 3 times 6 gives me 18, and that's a total of 48. So that's factors.